So thank you for joining us today. We're going to get started. Case of working papers, automating your engagement. So we're all here to look at our desktop software case of working papers. I do want to preface a few things just on the cloud front. There is a way that we can integrate this desktop package with our CaseWare cloud, which will allow us to host the files for you so you don't need file servers. Everything else, for the most part, is going to work exactly the same as we're going to go through here. It's just really up to you whether or not you want to put your files in cloud or have them just on your own local file servers. And then we're going to talk about the Smart Sync technology. It's just me today, so I can't really demonstrate it too much, but just know that as I'm making changes, what I can be doing is whether your file is in cloud or whether your file is on your own file server internally, all of the changes that I'm making will immediately synchronize to the parent file, and the parent file will update all of the other users, so everyone can be in the file at the same time regardless. So I just want to preface a few things there, but we'll get moving. So we have a slide deck to start off with, and this is really just going to preface what we're going to talk about in the live demonstration, as well as a little bit of information on CaseWare, just in case any of you folks haven't used our products before or don't know who we are. So on that note, CaseWare, we've been around 30 years this spring. We have in over 172 countries, and really, why we've been able to be so successful over so many years, decades actually, is that we've been dedicated to continuous innovation throughout our life cycle. It's like in our DNA, so to speak. So if you're an accountant, whether you're in a large practice, a small practice, a corporation, or a government, we have tools that are, going to make your life easier when it comes to the accounting side of things. We have over 500,000 users worldwide. We're in the Big Four, over a third of the top 100, but we're also in 5,000 small practices, and that's important because the same tools that the biggest firms are using, the smallest firms can use as well, right down to we have tons and tons of little sole practitioners. They use our software as well. And then we can also extend out to corporations and governments and folks that are in maybe finance or in the audit groups. They're also finding great ways to leverage our document management as well as the trial balance functionality. And we actually have some that don't even use the trial balance. So we really have tools for everyone. So product overview, we're going to go through a few items. Really, I'll just start off with this little slide that has working papers, big gray box, but basically it's a platform. So although it is a software application, really we've built an entire platform. So whether you're using some of our templates or whether you're customizing right in CaseView or built-in report writer or using something like Connector to link out to Word and Excel, you're working on top of that platform. We of course want to be able to get your data into that platform, so we import directly from popular accounting packages like QuickBooks or Sage, to name a few. There's like 50 plus. But we also import directly from Excel or even ASCII if needed. So if you have an accounting system, you can always export that out to Excel or comma-separated fields, and that basically acts as our catch-all. And that way we can very easily get the data into CaseWare. And what we want to do to create efficiency is actually start to standardize wherever possible. So when we talk about mapping numbers today, really just think of them as groupings. It's what they are. But they do more than just group accounts together. So there's lots of properties that as we standardize or map our client numbers to our numbers, we're going to be able to drive automation and efficiency through it. And that's going to make more sense once we get into the live demo. And then the document manager sits inside CaseWare Working Papers, and that's going to act as your paperless binder for all of the work papers, financial statements, source documents, emails, as well as workflow, assigning tasks. It's going to look and feel a lot like Windows Explorer, and you can literally drag and drop anything. It's got a Windows API, so if you can drag and drop it in Windows Explorer, we can do the same thing in here, but there's going to be a lot more workflow built into this, as well as like Audit, Trail, and then we have a lot of documents that we've created that generate the automatic, like we call them automatic documents, but they generate the working papers that you traditionally need, things like lead sheets, trial balance reports, journals, and we've already created them. So they're like live documents, and as you make changes, all of these documents are updating in live time. We do have content in the form of audit, review, and compilation programs checklists. Here in Canada, we have the PEG content. Internationally, we had IFAC, and in the US, we do have an Audit US and a SARS 21. We can also use the connector tool, which we're going to talk about in a moment, to link in the PPC forms directly into the product so we can integrate the PPC documents as well. And then on the financial sides, we have the financial statement templates, and this would provide Canada ASPE, US GAAP, international, or maybe a public company we have the IFRS templates as well. And this will provide all the regulatory, quarterly, annual financial statements, as well as a disclosure note library. This thing will reformat itself, paginate based on the, the accounts that actually are relevant to that engagement, as well as reorder notes as you insert them, and everything again is linked to the trial balance, the mapping database in CaseWare Working Papers. And again, if you, the connector tool, which we'll talk about in a moment, is going to allow you to link to Word and Excel financial statements. So if you built a bunch of reports in Word and Excel and you decided you want to continue doing that, we can at least make that more automated. And then tax software integration. So all of the major tax packages listed on there, we support them all. You're able to basically create a very quick bridge file, and basically do your tax adjustments in CaseWare and send out the file out to the respective product. And then CaseWare Connector. So again, allows you to integrate reports you've already built in Word and Excel, and opens up tick marking and cross-referencing within Microsoft Documents. And if you have PPC, we can integrate those as well. We'll note like Outlook and Adobe PDF and our other third-party applications. I think it's important to note Outlook. Again, it works in a Windows API. You can drag and drop it, and Outlook messages are no exception. We also support the ability to drag in an Outlook file so that it actually opens up an Outlook, but you can also right-click, drag it in, and save it as PDF or save it as an Outlook and PDF. And Adobe PDF, within the document management system, we can actually allow you to tick mark, roll complete, create hyperlink references, and basically embed your workflow on top of PDF, and we'll show you that. Mapping and working papers. So very quickly, just a high-level conceptual, so it helps understand the live demo parts. Let's say we're engaging with XYZ company, and their account numbers are 2012, their cash account numbers, are 201, 202, 203. That's fine. We're not actually too preoccupied with what the client numbers are. We're just going to map them up to our grouping, our map grouping. And once we map them up to 111, all the balances are going to flow to the balance sheet. We're still going to be adjusting the client numbers, and those adjustments will flow through 111, and this balance sheet would be set to have a report balance. So the nice thing with this is you can create your adjustments is basically in a database, and then you can filter what types of balances, where you want things to flow. And this does not have to be a one-to-one. This could be a one-to-many. It could be a balance sheet, could be a cash note, could be a cash schedule, could be really anything, a lead sheet. And then we go to client number 2, ABC Company. They have different numbers for their cash accounts. That's fine. We don't need to go and recreate the wheel every file. We're just going to line them up with the same number. It's going to flow out through our reports. So our reports are essentially hooked into a standardized convention so that we don't have to fiddle with things every time the client numbers change. We just normalize them to our numbers. And again, you're still going to adjust their numbers. And also, this could also be a subsidiary. So ABC Company and XYZ Company could be 2 different subsidiaries, and we can break apart multiple GLs, even if they have different numbers, in the same file, and then it'll actually naturally consolidate to the financial statements. You can also report on individual units and what have you. So we have very, very robust consolidation capabilities. The document manager looks like this. Again, it looks like Windows Explorer. You have your folder structure here. You can rename, reorder, create your own structure however you see fit. We have given you a sample file, and if you use a financials template or one of our templates, we've already done a lot of this work for you. So you can kind of take it as is and let us do a lot of the work for you, or you can readjust based on your own unique needs. It's very tailorable. And this is where we would also see what kind of activities are occurring inside. So as I'm signing off documents, creating issues, doing the work, these columns are basically displaying what kind of work has and what hasn't been done in the file. So it makes it very easy to go in, scroll up and down, and see kind of what's going on. We have other tools as well, and in here we would manage things like issues, annotations, tick marks, references, document sign off, that kind of thing. We've kind of already talked about Connector, but we're going to show you that in real time. And I do want to touch on SmartSync because this is a fantastic technology for anyone working at home or out in the field. It's true real-time collaboration. So you can work on your own sync copy of the file. Every change that you make synchronizes automatically, no push buttons or anything like that, to the parent file, and the parent file will then update all of the other users with their own sync files. So they're all working on their own files, but you, for all intents or purposes, are all working in the file at the same time. But because you're all working on your own unique sync copies, you can also work offline. So it does save time and bandwidth because it's only the changes that are pushing around. You don't need a lot of internet connectivity. And if you have no internet connectivity, you can work offline. It timestamps everything, and as soon as you go back online, it sends and receives the changes. So basically, you can check out of checking out. And that kind of goes back to that whole cloud thing at the beginning. If you decided you want to integrate CaseWare Working Papers with cloud, basically the parent file is in cloud instead of your file server, and then it synchronizes there instead. we can take over the backups and things like that. Lots of testimonials, but I'll just close this down for now, and we'll go into the main application. So I'm going to open up CaseWare Working Papers, and we're going to create a brand new file. I'm going to call this file Larry's Distribution. As a best practice, we might want to put like a year-end date on the front, and then every year we roll it forward. It pulls in all the information we want into the next file, but creates a new number. We call that one 2018, and we get a nice organized structure. I'm going to base today's on the financials US. Just know if you decide to get ASPE or IFRS or any of that the other templates, they work the same way. It's just the content, the notes, and some of the mapping structure is going to be slightly different, but the system will work the same. And if you decide you don't want the financials template, just go to existing file. I have a lot of existing files, but you're going to just find one initially, and it's going to be the sample file. If you base it on a sample file, it's going to do pretty much everything that we're going to look at today, except I'm also now going to have production ready financial statements. And I'll show you the two folders that the financials template adds that the sample file won't have, so you know what you're working with. We want you to be able to make an informed decision. Now, the nice thing with the financials template is that not only are we going to have, out of the box financial statements, we've also built a system where you can actually make changes to the style, to the, the fonts, the underlines that you use, the firm branding or organizational branding. And once you make that change at the template level, we've actually built it out so that it'll actually repackage those changes across all of your files. So instead of updating, potentially, hundreds of files of clients, you're going to be able to just make a change in one place and push it across. You can still make entity-specific changes, but wherever possible, you want to leverage them in future periods. You can make it at the template level. So this is the first screen that'll open up no matter what you're opening up. And just to show you, we support all the major reporting date sequences as well as even 13 and random, which essentially is custom. I am going to go in the operating name because this will flow through to financials and other reports and just say, oops, Larry's Distribution. I'll change this to an S Corp just so that you can see that we'll immediately copy in the appropriate tax codes based on the entity type. So we're updating these, whenever changes are made by the various vendors. But as soon as you choose, your tax package and the type, it's going to populate the tax codes in the back end of the database. So we do the mapping, it applies the tax codes as well as other properties. We're going to go into that. Autofill, that's not going to work quite yet. I have not imported a trial balance, so I'll just leave it as is. And I'm going to just hold Shift and just do a complete expand. Actually, maybe I'll unexpand for a moment. Financial reports is part of the financials template, as well as the template setup and controls documents. Everything else is available in like the sample file. The financial reports folder will contain the actual statements themselves, as well as the cash flow worksheet. And the template setup and controls documents folder is where you would go into a menu system and make changes to the look and feel of your financial statements. But I'm just going to expand everything. Things like lead sheets, I'm going to go view, docking view, open up a nice second window. And we can open up multiple copies of working papers at the same time and work on files concurrently. But I'm just going to open up the cash lead sheet so you can see that it is done. Like for all intents and or purposes, all these reports, all these working papers are done. We just haven't imported a trial balance to feed the numbers through all the various reports. If I want to see how something like this was created, like if you want to kind of reverse engineer what we've already given you, if you right click and hit properties, this is just an automatic document. Remember, it's a database filter report, and all you have to do is choose a type and a format. In this case, it's a lead sheet grouping type, and it's account balances with group subtotals. Maybe I don't want group subtotals, I just want totals. I just click OK and it updates. Maybe I would prefer the annotation to be on the right hand side, reorder columns, and I'll just put the annotation down to the right hand side. So these are customizable to an extent, and they're going to generate everything you need automatically. And these are not cells, so staff can't go in and just override a number to make it balance or whatever the case is, or accidentally delete something. This is feeding from the trial balance, single source data entry, so that you always have the confidence to know, A, it's not going to crash on you like Windows and Word and Excel tend to do, and it's always going to have the accurate numbers. As I post adjustments, everything's going to update. I can also layer my workflow in here. So here's some commentary. I can sign off on this thing, or maybe add, a hyperlink reference or a note bubble. We're going to go into that in just a moment, but just know that we can actually layer our workflow on it. So it's also more collaborative than Word or Excel would ever be. And everyone can be doing this all at the same time. Other reports of note, just at the very beginning, we have like a trial balance report. You're going to see this populate. We have tax reports. As we're posting adjusting journal entries, this is blank right now. I'm going to do an adjustment later. We'll see that this gets updated, etc. And then just before I do the import, I'll show you the financial statement in the template before we have a trial balance. And then you're going to see as soon as I import the trial balance, all of these reports, including the financial statements, are generated within like seconds. It just takes a moment for the first time. So that pulls up the help menu directly to the online help. And now our financials template should open up. For those of you familiar with CaseView, so any of the little documents we'll see, we have developed our own built-in report writer that's like a spreadsheet and a word processor in one. It'll do, kind of what Word and Excel will do, but this thing has been developed for accountants, so it's a much better environment. That said, there is a learning curve to it. So, and then some of you may already be aware of that. So what we wanted to do is provide a turnkey solution where our developers have built everything in CaseView for the end user, so that all you have to do is basically feed the system. And we've created menus, ribbon menus, to make it easier to make changes when you need to. So I'm going to click yes, and we're going to see that the operating name will flow through to the respective field. And just like that, it's going to open up the help menu again. I'm just going to minimize this. It's the first time. And I'm going to jump on the left-hand side. We have like an index. I'll just click to the balance sheet and it's there. So there's no numbers yet. Everything's kind of blue. Black means it's going to print. When I do the import, you're going to see the accounts that have balances are going to turn black, which means they'll print, and little red squiggly lines indicating a value change. So that as soon as I do the import, I'll be able to do a print preview and you'll see a finalized set of financials just like that. Little things like I want a third column, or I only want one column, or this is an audit. Maybe I'm going to do a compilation. It'll insert a notice to reader instead of an independent auditor's report. If I'm in the balance sheet, do I want, because we can pull in real numbers as well as budget and percentage, do I want those to show? Classified or unclassified. So we have different formats of various reports available for you as well. So very easy to use. So I'm going to close this down and we're going to do an import. To do an import, you would just go account, engagement, import. Again, we do import directly from Sage, QuickBooks. Sage 50 would be the typical one. QuickBooks at a corporate client, so we do import directly from Sage ERP as well recently. It always remembers the last setting. And then we can even pull in the GL detail if you'd like it. But we can always, of course, pull in the trial balance, client information, prior data, tax codes. There's lots of good information in the QuickBook file, and you can pull that in with it. Now, we're not going to do an import from QuickBooks today. I'm going to import from Excel. And by the way, Process FX, Engagement CS, we can directly import from those. If that's your scenario, if you're migrating from those packages, let me know. We can talk about that. We can even pull in the old document manager. They call it the engagement binder. And then Excel is our catch-all, so we can always get the data out to Excel or ASCII. And this is just an Excel sheet sitting on my hard drive. And it just has to be in columns. So I'm going to now tell the software what each column represents. I'm going to skip the first row. It's just the headers, the column headers. And I'm going to, second column is my account number. That's really all we need, is an account number, client number. And by the way, if you have QuickBooks and your client doesn't add numbers, there are those clients out there that don't use account numbers. We can assign them incrementally. We have a way of managing that. There is a best practice. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give an account description. I happen to have this, as well as balances. So I have a opening balance and 2 prior ending balances for comparative purposes. And the first column that I kind of glazed over is my entity abbreviator. So at the beginning, we had the XYZ ABC example, 101, 102, 103. This is a QIL, KIL example, same thing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that this is my entity abbreviation. Here's QIL, I'll scroll down a little bit, and here is KIL. Just to show you how easy it is to break apart multiple GLs. There is an opportunity to do it later. You don't have to do them together. You can do them one by one, but here's just a good example. And I'm going to go ahead and I've cheated today. So to save a bunch of time, I've gone ahead and I've already assigned my map number groupings. Normally you wouldn't have this. So we're going to go back and we're going to do a handful of them together as an exercise so you know how to do it, but we're going to save a bunch. I don't want to do 200 of them, but basically 101, 102, 103 is already lined up to 111. In the software, we're going to do a drag and drop, and I'll show you how to do that in just a sec. So I'm going to click next. Here's a breakdown of the two entities and the accounts that exist. We can do things like accumulate balances for a fresh, new information, or clear the old one, do a fresh import, or round on. 30 years, there's been lots of use cases as to how they want to massage the numbers on import, but we'll just keep it simple. And we can always save a record layout. So we know the columns are always the same year in, year out. We don't have to do that going forward. And just like that, we're done. We're going to see a beginning of an audit trail. I'm the user. Here's the balances. Nothing existed prior to import. And I think this is the trial balance report. Yep, it's complete. If I jump down to my lead sheet, it's also done. We did the entity abbreviation on import, so I can already select the specific entity that I want to see, or I can go to a specific period. Now we only pulled in yearly numbers, but if I pulled down monthly, quarterly, etc., I can filter down to that as well. The financial statements themselves are now ready to go. Understanding, of course, you're still going to have to do like adjusting journal entries and all of that, but again, as you make those, all of these reports will be updated. And I'm going to jump over to the balance sheet again, just because that's where we were before. And here we go, value change indicators. It's now going to print those particular items. If I do a print preview, we're going to see a nice set of financial statements ready to go. I'll page up to the very top here, table of contents, and the formatting, I have the font very large right now for presentation purposes, but normally it wouldn't be cut off like this. Here's my table of contents. Here's the auditor's report. There's the company name, the date pushing through, all the way down to our balance sheet, statement of income, and notes. And notes can be tabled, and those tabled notes can be mapped. And we can do things like pie charts and all that stuff too. And actually, I should just skip down to the note just for a moment. So that here's the property, plant, and equipment note. It's a tabled note with input cells. And this is another type of note that is mapped to the mapping database. So if you make an adjustment, it flows through to here as well. And just to show you, you're like, okay, well, how easy is it to insert a note or add a line item? Insert, note, pulls from the library of notes, and we have, depending on the region, we have like 1,000 plus or 1,400 plus notes. They're all categorized. I'm going to just go into my restricted cache note. It's the very first one. It's going to give us a preview. It's still loading. There it is. Okay, that looks good. That's the one I want. Click OK. We're going to see property, plant, and equipment. We'll turn to number 3. Stockholders' equity will take the 4, and the restricted cache note will assume the number 2 spot. So it's going to reorder, reformat, paginate, do everything for you. And there's my restricted cache note in there. If I needed to go in and just type the note a little bit different, you can do that. If you know that you want to reword it on a more permanent basis, you can go into the firm template and reword it there and save it as your own note. And then that becomes part of the library. If I want to just add a new line, so let's say this year there's a new account that didn't exist last year. First, I would add it to the mapping database. Then I would just have to go right click, new row. And again, we would do this at the template level normally, but I'm just going to do it in here to save some time. 2 notes, click OK, or not 2 notes, sorry, 2 lines, click OK, and then we just select the map number, and it drives the description and the values. So that's pretty much how it works. I'm going to close this down. I will save it, and very soon I'm going to go into the financial statements in Excel. And I'm also going to show you how to change the formatting in financials. So maybe you like the financials, but you're not quite thrilled with the fonts that we use or the underline types, that kind of stuff. We can tweak all that, so don't worry. But I will, because I did cheat a little bit, I don't want to forget to go back and show you how the mapping convention works. So now we're going to jump into account assign mappings. Normally what would happen is your client numbers would appear on the left-hand side. You don't need to manually enter a trial balance. You just import it. Your numbers are the client numbers on the left, your numbers on the right. And as the account, you say, okay, petty cash belongs to cash. As soon as I do that, the totals of these two accounts are flowing through the consolidated statements, or I can report on the individual entity or line item. But it's not just flowing the balances of those accounts through cash, it's also picking up all the properties that we've assigned to cash. So it is a balance sheet item. It's a debit sign. It's another quick current asset. We can set flip type, bank indebtedness, GIFI code. In the US, our tax codes. And groupings. So that lead sheet report that we're looking at a moment ago, that was just an automatic document that said, I'm a lead sheet grouping report, show me group 1, section A. And then if we move down to the short-term investments lead sheet, same settings except group 1, section B. But you may find use cases, there are many of them, where cash might belong to many different groups. Functional expenses as another example, or different fund accounting. You can go ahead and predefine all of the various groupings that a particular account could be identified to, and then you can have reports that call on those specific groups. And then next year, if one account shifts over to another grouping, maybe there's like a change, you can just drag and reorder, and then all of the reports are updated. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go to the other accounts, and you don't have to go up to the high level cash. I could say foreign bank. I'm going to drive this onto my foreign bank. And domestic bank, I'm going to put this on top of domestic bank. I could also just go to cash. Depends on if you want to be able to report at the lower level or if you're just content to report at 111, the cash level. So you can go detailed or you can go up. Even if you go detailed, you can still always report cash. We'll report everything below, including these sub maps. So it's a pretty nice system. I'm going to go to short-term investments. That really makes it easy for the end user to not have to tweak reports every single time. All you really need to do, your staff, is just drag and drop. And if you're coming in from QuickBooks, we can actually go a step further and you can go to Tools, Options, Autofill, and you can auto map now. So we have an algorithm, a little bit of AI, artificial intelligence that we've had for, oh God, I don't know how many, 10 or more years, where basically we run an algorithm that picks up the account class and the tax code and maps it against your map numbers and the tax code and the account class assigned within the section that we were just in before here. So we map them up, and then that auto map will actually automatically apply all the mapping for you. And by the way, once you go to year 2, even if you had to do the left to right drag, all of the accounts will be like remembers it. So the only thing that will appear on the left hand side next year is new accounts that didn't exist last year. So that makes it really easy to deal with that too. Okay, so we're going to go into Connector just a moment with Excel, but just before I do that, organizational standards. So if you like the financials and you want it to change the way it looks and feels, you can go into the firm settings document, organizational standards, and do things like upload a logo, and put in your own fonts. Maybe you prefer Arial or Roman numeral or whatever the case is. You can go into here and pull in your styles, apply your formats, underlines, note numbering, groupings, logos, basically browse for an image, what reporting periods, yearly or quarterly it'll include, and general settings like, do I want to include a cover page? Yes or no. And as you make these changes, you can actually lock them down so that end users can't modify that if you prefer, and that ensures firm-wide consistency. Right down to the order of columns, how things are, period date sequences are negatives, negative, or in brackets, or turn red, or whatever the case that you want to do. All the things you've typically done in Word and Excel, you can do in here as well. And then last but not least, the knowledge library. So this is like the central repository of content. You can go ahead and add your own content to this system. The asterisk would be if you're trying to build things that are out of the typical, quarter over quarter, year over year, like fund accounting. You probably need some case fee training, and I think Connector would be a better tool for that initially. But if you're just looking to build some other stuff, you can do it very easily, including notes. You can just reword notes and save them as your own notes. So that brings us to the Connector tool in Excel. So I have a balance sheet, a very simple balance sheet in Excel on my hard drive. And so I'm going to pull it in to here. We can see it's just drag drop. This is a new instance of that Excel sheet. So the Excel sheet's still sitting in my hard drive, but there's just a new one self-contained basically in this file's database as like its own container. And if I open it up, we're going to see some old numbers, and I've done this on purpose because I want to click Enable Content and show you how everything just updates. So this is going to say, current year. This is prior year, or current year -1 essentially. And this is the current year's balance of map number 111. This is a prior year's balance, and this is just some name that was in another file. I'll click Enable Content. Everything's going to get updated to the most recent content. So if you're using a consistent mapping structure, just like the financials template, we can basically automate everything, and every file you're going to base, because I can save this file as a template, and then you create a new file based on this file. It pulls in all of this stuff so that all you have to do is import the trial balance into the next file. And you can choose at a very granular level everything you want to pull in, right down to like specific tick marks. Like you can go real granular, or you can just go simple and just create it as a base template. Or even easier, the financials template. But anyways, I digress. So to recreate this, to show you how it works, I'm just going to go into a cell. The connector tool applies itself to the ribbon menu within the add-in section, and you're going to see a bunch of CaseWare tools. CaseWare linkage. To recreate this 198,954, which is the value of cash, I'm just going to say I want my mapping, and I want default entity. Oh, because I don't normally go include sub balances. Yeah, there's the 198. So because I mapped it down to the lower levels on the mapping, sign mapping area, I do have to include the sub balances, this little button here, to get the 198. But you can see we have a lot of flexibility. Like you can report whatever you need to report. I just almost forgot about this button. So I'll click 198,954. And then this drives the case view calculation, but the great news is you don't need to know any of this. Your staff just have to hit check mark. If I want to get, say, this 525 in a cell instead, so that's last year's balance of short-term investments. So I'll go to short-term investments, but I only want last year. And it filters the database for the relevant information. Maybe I wanted just January or just Q2, or perhaps I only wanted Queen Investment Limited's balance of cash last year. Perhaps I didn't want the report balance, I wanted the unadjusted balance, or I wanted a federal tax balance. Whatever the case is, you can go through and select whatever you want to report in that cell. We can pull in budget and forecast numbers as well. We can apply foreign exchange, we can round, all of this is available in here, and then the staff just hits the check mark. So just drop boxes, point and click, check mark, and now that's linked into the cell and we'll roll forward. It doesn't have to be just the map numbers, it can be based on the groupings as well. So I get some groups that are, I want to be able to report at groups, and there's really good reasons for that, like fund accounting. If you've got fund accounting requirements, you can repurpose or purpose all of these groups to support all of your needs, and then that'll make it really easy to report on those. It could also be something as simple as engagement properties, which is like the client name, date, that kind of thing. I want Larry's distribution in here. Next year, Larry's distribution changes their name. I don't have to go and update every single form and field. They're all linked to the engagement property, so I just update it there and it flows. It could also be tax export codes and could be class type. So I want to do some ratio numbers. I can generate that as well. By the way, we also have an automatic document that automatically creates all the ratios for you. So document referencing, we can also do that with the connector tool. So I do not need connector to import from Excel. I do not need connector to go to a lead sheet and hyperlink reference down to Excel supporting document. But if I want to be able to embed a hyperlink reference inside Microsoft and point out to something else, the connector tool comes into play. So I'll just say I want to point back up to maybe my trial balance. And just like that, we have a hyperlink. If I click this, the trial balance opens up, the report, that is. And tick marks. So we can also pull from the list of tick marks that we have in the file, and I can tick mark my word in Excel. There is another tool, again, if you're coming in from ProSystemFX, we can convert third-party formulas, so we can relink up all your old reports. Again, if that's your case, talk to me. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Save. And we'll jump back over to working papers. Something tells me it's crashed. Okay, I'm going to Control-Alt-Delete and take out. So, I mean, this is a good example of some of the pain points with working with Word and Excel. Switch, should I lock? No, not lock this computer. Oops. Task Manager, and I'm just going to take out this Excel program. This does happen occasionally. There we go. Working papers was still running under the scenes, but I'm going to flow through into some supporting documents. So on that note, we'll start pulling in some source documents that are in PDF and Excel. I have a bank statement for my cash lead sheet. And I have an aged accounts receivable listing for my receivables lead sheet. And if you notice, the document numbering convention will actually immediately apply the next number available. And I'm going to open up my cash lead sheet, and I'm going to right-click, Hyperlink Reference, and I'm going to point down to that PDF. As soon as we choose the type, it's actually going to filter the entire document manager for folders that contain PDF. Makes life a little bit easier. And I can go to a particular page if I like. And I can also go global, so this hyperlink reference will appear on any automatic document 101 QIL petty cash. And I'll click OK. You'll notice the hyperlink reference also has the A.2 document number. If I was to renumber this document to C.6, all of the hyperlink references that point to it will update. If I click on the A.2, it's going to open up PDF directly inside CaseWare. And that allows me to role complete, tick mark, hyperlink reference, all of those various workflow functionalities right on top of PDF. So it's we have an internal image viewer that you do need to turn on, and that allows us to layer the workflow on top of PDF. So if I go to the first PDF and hit properties, just change it from external to internal. And instead of opening up in Adobe, it's going to open up inside CaseWare and allow us to leverage all this, pretty much all the same functionality that's in automatic documents, but put them onto PDF. While I have this open, I'll also note that we can choose how different documents behave during different activities. So by default, it's a source document. I want it to lock down with the file. I want it to retain on cleanup. I want it to be included in an index, which is like a batch PDF of the entire file. I'll show you later. We can go account, export, PDF. Roll forward with the file. I can have it turn into a placeholder or roll forward as a placeholder, and I can also set a deliverable date. Now this will not send out like an Outlook reminder, but it will show up in the outstanding deliverables, and we can run reports to find those. And there's a column that you can set up so that staff are aware of these various deliverable dates. If you're linked into Q, within our cloud space, we're all pulling some metadata from the file as well, and deliverables will be some dashboarding on that available. There's also a history. We can see when things occurred, who did what, when, and hopefully there's a note on why. And then for the Excel, same concept, right-click, hyperlink, Excel. It's going to filter right down to those that contain Excel, and I can go to a particular sheet as well as a particular cell. So I'll say sheet 1, cell C4. Now the difference is that when I click this, it's going to open up in Excel, not inside CaseWare. So we can do the image layer on top of PDF, our automatic documents, in case you support all that functionality. But within it, Word and Excel, it's still going to open up in Word and Excel. But if you do have the connector tool, we can allow you to tick mark and hyperlink reference, like we're showing earlier, as well as link various properties of the database into the Excel document as well. What I also want to do now is open up, before I do that, I'll just show a couple differences too. So the other functionality available, notes. This is important functionality. Hello world, click OK. It's a little bubble. We can hover over it and see there is a view, show notes. You'd probably want this on. I just usually turn it off during demos because it takes up a little bit of space. Right click, I have tick marks. You can pull in your own tick marks. You can color code these. Right? You can reword them, bring in your own images, that kind of stuff. So totally tailorable. You can also go to the home and pull them down. So I'll open up that lead sheet again. So if I prefer, I can do it like this instead. It's up to you. And there's some Alt Command keys that you can use as well. Commentary, hi Nancy, did you do this or that? We can also do annotation, which is like a combination of a reference, a tick mark, and a note in one. And then we could also have issues. So I could say I'm going to create a document issue. I could do a line level issue if I want, but I'm going to do a document level issue. And I'll say that it's a review note, reconciliation, and I'll assign it to myself. It's just me in the file today, but you can assign it to a particular person. Give it a description, needs a rec, and we can mark it off as in progress, started today, due Friday, reminder Thursday. It's not going to send out an Outlook reminder, but it will notify them when they're in the software that it's due, as well as send them a reminder. We also have columns here for all issues and outstanding issues. So I can see that there's an issue and it's outstanding. And we also have an issues toggle that'll open up a little window pane here, and I can go in and filter down to like just my stuff or just review notes, whatever the case is. Lots of, and these are all editable, like those types that I chose. You can create your own types. And I'll double click. Now let's say I'm the person that was assigned to it. Closed. Mark it off as completed. And now we have a strike through. The uncleared issue has disappeared, but the all issues is still showing. And there's also an automatic document that will display issues. So it's actually kind of a nice little, I'll go to general work, document, new, automatic documents. This is how we create one from scratch. And I'm just going to type I for issues, created by everyone. I could go more detail, but I'll just leave it. Oh, I didn't put a document number in. So I'm sitting in a, let me just go into this one here. Document new, automatic document. And now we have a nice kind of checklist. And I can just say cleared. And this becomes a bit of a workflow tool if you would like to use it. You don't have to, it's kind of nice. We can also run tags. So I can say this is like a cache tag. Cache. We can color code these, apply multiple tags, as many tags as we want. And then what I can do is I can run the filter for the document manager, and we have a number of built-in filters. So I can, I just want to see everything that is fully completed. I guess like nothing's been fully completed. Let me clear the filter. Let me just fully complete these two. So now I can run the filter for everything fully completed, and it's going to give me those two. And there's a number of other default ones, or I could just create my own. And I can say new, and I want to create a new one that shows me all the cache documents. And I can click edit, and I'm going to apply the tags, or the tag, the cache tag. This could be other things, certain types of documents, contains commentary, or has uncleared issues, belongs to a specific entity, all of the various settings. There's an advanced filter that you can run as well, but we'll just keep it simple, and I'm just going to see all the documents that have a cache tag. Just like that. So we make it really easy to find the relevant information in the document binder, but I'm going to go ahead and I'll just click none for now. I also want to show you that we're not limited to two roles. Two is just the default. I'll open up a third. I'll call this one partner review. And I'll say 3 requires 2, 2 requires 1, some role dependency. And I also want to flag changes after I've signed off on role 2 or 3 on external documents, so like Word and Excel. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. Now I've got a third role. So I have an extra third drop little box that'll appear in here. And I'm going to go to that aged accounts receivable listing because this is one of the this is one of the external documents that's inside the file. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sign it off as, oops, can't do 2 because I need 1. Just clicked a little bit too low. By 1, reviewed by 2. And now I'm going to go in, maybe I'm the partner and I've come in and I've taken a look around and I accidentally typed a dot inside this cell. Never mind actually erasing stuff, even just a dot. And click save. there's been a change to the document, no matter how small it's been. Close it down. We're going to get a nice hazard that's showing us it was modified after the following sign off. So a little bit of covering our ends type functionality in here, and you're going to get a little warning here as well. Now somebody can come in with the right permissions and clear it, but at least we get the hazard. And we also can redline our automatic documents. So let's say I was in this cash lead sheet and I've reviewed it. As a best practice, what we would recommend is, and there's an auto compare I'll show you in a moment too, but we can save a milestone. So that's a snapshot of this document. So I right click, I review it, I create a milestone. Somebody else comes along and posts an adjusting journal entry. So the cash lead sheet, petty cash right now is like $50. I'm going to go in to create an adjusting journal entry, so a good chance to see how the adjustments work. I just click new, creates the next available number. I would choose typically yearly, the date, maybe a document reference, the source document if needed, the type of adjustment, because remember we can filter for the types of balances that we want. I can adjust at different levels, but I'll just keep it at the mapping level. We can select a misstatement type, and we can also adjust budget forecast numbers, and we can do like recurring or calculation on top. So, double or declining balance, we can set up depreciation. Reversing entries we can do as well, but I'm going to, again, keep it simple. QIL, petty cash, big number, and I'll balance it off to inventory. And then the partner comes in and says, well, who the heck signed off on $10 million worth of petty cash? Right click, compare. Everything's redlined, all the changes since that sign off. Now we do also have engagement history auto compare, and what we would typically recommend is automatically compare documents to last access by me. Anyone's going to create a lot, too many, but just last access by you. And if you go in the file and something's changed, it's going to be redlined on the description over here. We did consolidation at the very beginning, so you don't have to. Any given point in time, I can just say new, XYZ. If I have a bunch of CaseWare files, I could have any number of files. I can then go and browse for them and pull the data into this file and have a consolidated file and individual files, or you can just have everything consolidated into a live file, which we would usually recommend. And I'll just click none. We can do things like fractional contribution, prior year, apply foreign exchange, all the various settings. But I'll just keep it simple. Click OK, it creates a new node. I can drag this around and create the hierarchy that I might want. Apply, and then I could just do another import and then associate that import to that entity abbreviation, that entity essentially, and that just becomes part of the file. Export, we can export again to tax software. So we set this, we define this in the engagement properties, but if we needed to change it later, we can. But you can see we can, depending on if you're doing your adjustments in here or not, we can put the information out whatever format it needs. CCH Pro System FX is .text. Ultra Tax is .dwi. So we're even putting it out in the same format that particular package wants. We also can export the adjustments back out to QuickBooks, Sage, and some popular accounting packages. And the idea is we don't want you to have to do things more than you have to, so more than once. So if you do your adjustments in CaseWare, you can export them back out to the various bookkeeping software, and you can choose specific things that you want to put out. So you can even filter that down. We can also export out a batch PDF. So I can take the whole file, or I can save sets of documents. Maybe there's 18 documents that I'm routinely batch PDFing. You can save that all out and it'll send it out in a batch PDF with a nice index on the left-hand side. Year-end close. A lot of functionality in here. I'm not going to go through all these, but just for the importance currently, or one of the current things that's changed is we can do We definitely can support multiple roll forwards, and what that means is if you need to get data into last year's like closed or lockdown file so that we can push it forward into the current file for reporting comparative purposes, we can do that. We can also do a cleanup phase, which gets rid of sensitive information, and lockdown. You can just lock it down now, or you can set a jurisdictional date. And at 12:01 in the morning, the first time it's opened, it just locks down automatically. We haven't gone into protection at all, but we can also turn protection on in the file. You can control who can lock down, who can delete. You can go very flat. A certain user group can do sets of things, or you can go very granular and say like a certain user group can access this specific document if you wanted to. You don't have to turn protection on, but if you'd like to, data store administration tool is included with CaseWare. It's free. It's up to you if you want to use it. If you have Active Directory already set up in your group, we can just point to the settings and pull them into data store, and then you can tweak from there or leave them as is. Or if you don't have AD, you can just create user groups directly in the data store tool. Templates, I'm happy with what I've done today. I want to save it as a template. I can go ahead and add it to my list of templates so that I can create future files based on that. Or maybe you forgot to and you just want to, oh man, I did this great grouping, or one of my employees did all this grouping work, but she did it in a file, not at a template. We can go copy components, and I can copy into this file something from another file, and I can go down to any of the little bits. So very granular. So we make it really easy. We want you to be always able to leverage the work that you've already done, and we also try to provide you a good head start in the form of the sample file or templates that we offer as well. I think I've covered most of the stuff. So I haven't, because it's just me today, I haven't had a chance to go through the question box. So I'm going to start to do that very shortly. I'll make sure I get to all the questions. I'll also open up the mics for Q&A so that we can, everyone wants to discuss, we can discuss, and then of course I'll provide my contact info so we can always, if a question comes to mind later, we can do it at that time. But before we move to that section, I just want to touch on cloud one last time. So I mentioned at the very beginning, we can integrate the desktop product with CaseWare Cloud. What we can do is we can click publish, and what we would, on the cloud side, we would create a workspace for this client, like Larry's distribution, and then we would go ahead and we would associate all the years of files typically to that workspace in cloud. I know right now I could create an entity directly in cloud. We do support the functionality of like engagement properties. I'd just say Larry's distribution. I don't know if I just did create one by accident. And we don't normally, let me try this one more time. Engagement. You know what, I'm going to do the proper way anyways. So what you should be doing is going to cloud, your site. You would log in. Kind of gives you a little bit of a sneak peek into what cloud is offering right now. There's a lot of apps in here, lots of tools, time and expenses, dashboards, timelines, client portal capabilities. But we're going to just quickly create an entity. So this is like a workspace. I'll say it's new, client type, give it a name, Larry's distribution, and fill in the various things. We can make things private or limited, but I'll just click save. Oh, I do need to put a number in cloud. So just pick a random number. And now the entity is set up. So on the working paper side, I've already integrated my desktop with cloud, so I can now go to cloud. And basically loop it in. So I'll say Larry's, it'll actually find it and link it in. I can update, Toronto, Ontario or something, and that's going to actually update the cloud information. But the last step would actually be to publish. And once the file is published, the entire parent file is in cloud, and now this copy is turned into like a synchronized copy. And then other users in cloud can be given access to that file. And then as we're all working on our own synchronized copies, those changes are pushing up to cloud and back down. The other nice thing about cloud is you don't need to open up a VPN because we're using some technology in the backend SmartSync server. We're able to encrypt the data up and down through like HTTPS and SSL, which is the same, basically we're same thing as online banking. So 256-bit AES encryption in transmission, it's encrypted at rest. I mean, we have a whole cloud presentation on Thursday if you want to attend that goes into all of that detail, but basically you don't need a VPN, and you can just, whenever you're online, you're sharing, and whenever you're offline, you're timestamping. It's a really nice system. We do all the backup for you. You don't have to worry about, disaster recovery, anything like that. And it actually gives you an extra layer of security, because when you go in, instead of going into your file server and going through the Windows directory, you just go to the new SmartSync server tab, and the staff member will only see the files they've been provided access to in cloud, and they just double click and it pulls the sync copy down. And at the end of the engagement, you just delete the sync copy, and that's it. That's pretty much the workflow. You take it down when you start the engagement, and you delete it when you're done the engagement, and everything's backed up in cloud anyways. And again, without going into too much more on the cloud side, we have things like timelines, so we can see what our staff are up to. We can open up for client portal and do like file requests, tasks, discussions. We have a lot more visibility and collaboration tools, not only for our staff, but also with our clients. And we can now invite them to download securely a finished, completed tax return instead of emailing it to them. And there's a number of other tools as well, but we just don't have enough time in the context of today's presentation. But I certainly want to let everyone know that this exists. And if you'd like to attend, we do hold those CaseWare Cloud webinars fairly regularly as well. And just in case anyone logs off before we do the Q&A, just one last time, here's my contact information. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach me direct. I will be reaching out to everyone that attended as well. And that way we can, I'll provide my information again. And if you have any questions afterwards, we can sync up. And if you want to move forward with the product, we do provide a free implementation webinar, so you're not left to your own devices. You get a best practice. It's about over an hour length type webinar, private, just a product expert and your group, and they go through best practices on using and implementing the product. And that would be the same with cloud as well. You get one for working papers, and you'd get another one for cloud. If you get financials, you would also get one for financials, and support, other than the single user license, but you can add support plans to that. All the Office licenses or other licenses you can support, updates and new version releases are included with the licensing fee. So I'll thank everyone for attending today, and we'll hope to hear from everyone soon. But now we'll go through some of the Q&A.